Hey guys, what's up? Filmtastic Panda here. I've been doing some reflecting about my channel, and after filling it with Oscar prediction videos and fall season movie reviews, I thought it might be a good time to try out a new thing. I kinda wanted to share my thoughts on something, just anything that makes me feel passionate about film. And after thinking about that something long and hard, I concluded that for my very first video essay, I needed to talk about Damien Chazelle. But why? Why do I need to talk about this Hollywood prodigy whose success has been so well publicized? Is it because I'm jealous of his incredible talent and the fact that he's been able to accomplish so much before 40 while I reflect on the perils of my young adult life and career and the looming reality that I may never achieve what he has, which makes me want to live vicariously through him with this video? Yeah, I mean, probably, to an extent. But mostly, I just felt a deep urge to share my thoughts on a person who made me fall in love with film. Yes, I know I'm probably not alone here, but Damien Chazelle's films have really changed my life, and have kindled a passion in me I would have never thought possible before seeing them. There is something about his three major features, and I'm sorry, guy battling on the park bench, I promise I will get to you in due time, that move me so deeply and absolutely rock my worldview. And they did so in such different ways. Whiplash shocked me. It kept me on the edge of my seat, and it had me sweating and shaking and feeling a drumbeat inside my body for its entire duration. La La Land transported me to a magical place. It swept me up my feet, and it had me smiling and dancing and ultimately crying. And First Man touched the depths of my heart. It had me living through Neil Armstrong's eyes and feeling his soul, and it made me reflect about my place in this world. All of his films are so powerful, yet so thematically, cinematographically, and tonally different. Throughout his filmography, Chazelle has always tried to bring something fresh and different to the table. I was lucky enough to attend a talk with him at the Toronto International Film Festival, and he mentioned how he switched things up from film to film. So he went from doing a dark and thrilling examination of the perils of ambition in Whiplash, to telling a bright and whimsical love story in La La Land, to recounting a quiet and introspective real-life story in Neil Armstrong's Journey to the Moon. And now, in his new feature, Babylon, he's going for the loudest and most decadent reimagining of young Hollywood. Yet, even through all these tonal changes, there are still multiple through lines all of his films share, something I expect will continue to be the case with Babylon. Since his films are all masterpieces in my eyes, I want to dive deep into what I think binds them together and what ultimately makes them Damien Chazelle films. So let's get into it. Ambition drives and divides. Every Damien Chazelle movie I have seen features one or two protagonists that are unwaveringly devoted to achieving their personal goals. Whiplash features Andrew, a drummer in the most competitive jazz school in the country, unhealthily obsessed with becoming an industry great. La La Land has Sebastian, a passionate pianist determined to preserve the beauty and timelessness of jazz and open his own jazz club. And Mia, a struggling actress giving absolutely everything in hopes of sparking her own Hollywood career. And, of course, in First Man, Neil Armstrong is dead set on touching down on the moon, something nobody had ever done before. In all of these films, ambition is the principal driver for our protagonists. Not only does it become a virtue for all of them, a decisive characteristic for success in all of their stories, but it ultimately turns into a burden. If you haven't seen these movies, watch out for spoilers. I'm gonna go into them in 3, 2, 1, woo! In La La Land, Sebastian and Mia both have palpable and easily discernible goals, and their goals are not necessarily in conflict with one another. I mean, Sebastian can open up his own jazz club while Mia becomes an actress. What's the problem with that? Can their love not coexist with their success? The first time I saw the film, I genuinely believed that it could. You could argue that the movie makes that point during the dreamy alternate ending sequence, when the film shows what could have been had Sebastian joined Mia on her trip to France to shoot her first feature. So, at the point where protagonists split ways, Sebastian could have simply joined Mia on the plane to France. He could have taken that leap of faith. In fact, he even makes it a point to say there's great jazz in Paris. But we learned earlier in the film when Sebastian and Mia have their big fight over touring, and Sebastian misses Mia's big one-woman opening show, that compromising between their love/relationship and their ambition only ends up half satisfying both. Had he followed Mia to Paris, Sebastian would have put opening his jazz club in LA, where he wanted it, on the back burner, and maybe that would have caused some resentment and eroded their relationship. Ultimately, he makes a choice, not only to pursue his ambition, but also to allow Mia to pursue hers, unencumbered by the sacrifices their relationship would have entailed. The ups and downs of ambition are an undeniable theme in La La Land. In many ways, Sebastian and Mia fall in love because they are both ambitious people. Mia ditches her snobby boyfriend to go see Sebastian at the movie theater because she was swept away by his love and pure passion for jazz. Their passion and ambition brings them together, but ultimately it drives them apart. The story would have never started if it were not for the ones who dream, but it also could not have concluded in the exact dream that they hope for. Whiplash is literally all about ambition. There are multiple scenes where Andrew says, "I want to be great," and he endlessly practices to increasingly horrific breaking points in hopes of reaching his own high standards. Of course, his instructor Fletcher is in many ways the fuel to his fire. Every time Andrew seems to be running out of steam or even remotely relaxing, Fletcher will throw an insult or a chair at him. But Andrew's determination and ambition to reach his lofty goals keep him going until the film's finale, where he plays the best motherfucking solo the world has ever seen. So, his ambition is his greatest virtue, but it is also his greatest detriment. As the film progresses, Andrew becomes so obsessed with his drumming that he starts losing himself, his other priorities, and his relationships in the process. In a critical scene with Supergirl, Melissa Benoist's character, who plays his girlfriend, Andrew confesses he has no time for a relationship because he needs to focus on his drumming. He is so cold and stoic in this exchange that it seems he essentially has no humanity or feeling, something he clearly did have at the start of the film. So ambition became an erosive force for him, eating away at his personality and capacity for feeling, and ultimately detaching him from any sense of humanity. Much has been said about the final 10 minutes of this movie, which is some of the best filmmaking you'll ever see, by the way. Yes, Andrew delivers an unimpeachable performance, with the perfect double-time swing, something he had been practicing for the entirety of the film, and blows Fletcher and the audience out of the water. But at what cost? Similar to La La Land's protagonists, he is making a sacrifice, but unlike Mia's and Sebastian's, his sacrifice feels more instantly gratuitous than beneficial in the long term. He loses so much just to get this moment of catharsis, and you can just see how far removed he is from the world in my favorite shot of the film, with Andrew's father watching him through a door crack. That shot is so genius, I could do a whole video about it. Ultimately, in his pursuit of ambition, he gains the success and recognition he seeks, but loses most of everything else: joy, his girlfriend, and a lot of time he could have spent with his father, among other things. Then there's First Man. This is the real-life story of the first moon landing told through film, and it is not about planting the US flag on the giant cheese ball. In fact, no flag is planted in the movie, but it is about Neil's journey to get there. Out of the 3 features I'm covering, this is the only Damien Chazelle did not write the screenplay for, but it feels very deliberate that he ended up picking the script. Indeed, First Man follows the ambition thread from Whiplash and La La Land quite seamlessly, although Neil's motivations are distinctly different from the protagonist in Chazelle's previous films. After tragically losing his daughter Karen, Neil sees space exploration as his ultimate escape, as the only thing he can do to deal with his incalculable pain. There is no sense that he is participating in the moon landing mission because he's passionate about moon exploration, or because he feels participating in this mission will give him some kind of special recognition. He is in it because of Karen and for Karen. It becomes increasingly clear that his ambition to go on the near-suicide mission he embarks on can mostly be explained by the love he has for his daughter. And this love and grief-fueled ambition takes him to heights never before reached by mankind. Moreover, he finally gets to release the grief he had been holding onto in the shape of Karen's bracelet into the peace and quiet of the moon. Along the way though, his tunnel vision goals really take a toll on him. Of course, he loses multiple friends and colleagues in the spaceflight and ignition accidents, which would take a toll on anybody, but they especially take a toll on Neil. Neil has a hard time opening up about his daughter and his pain, all of which he funnels into his space exploration mindset. So he misses many chances to connect with his colleagues and use their shoulder to cry on, particularly with Ed White, Jason Clarke's character, who he cares about deeply but he cannot seem to show that to him. Also, he makes his relationship with his wife Janet and his boys an afterthought of sorts, going on a mission with a slim chance of survival, and leaving Janet in the most devastatingly stressful place possible. It is not until the end of the film, which I will talk about in more detail later on in this video, that he can reflect back not only on the much needed release the moon landing brought him, but the things he regretted doing or not doing on Earth before getting there. What else binds these films together though? A picture says more than 1,000 words. Visual storytelling is a pivotal aspect of filmmaking, and if you've heard the phrase show not tell, you'll probably know that the very best directors communicate things visually rather than spoon-feeding the audience through dialogue or exposition. Damien Chazelle is a visual storytelling master, and nowhere is that more evident than in the final sequences of his three major features. Notice that there is very little said in the final 10 minutes of all his films. Whiplash ends with an intense 10-minute performance where Andrew plays the drums and exchanges a few looks with Fletcher. La La Land wraps up with a dreamlike sequence of what could have been had Mia and Sebastian stayed together, and a mutual acknowledgement that they're okay with the path they chose. And First Man concludes with a return from the moon, and Neil and Janet finally seeing each other again through the quarantine glass. Chazelle is confident and skilled enough to craft dialogue-less or dialogue-light sequences while keeping the audience engaged with the emotional throughline and themes of his films. Of course, all of these scenes are taken to another level via Justin Hurwitz's beautiful scores, but the scores would not resonate as much if it weren't for the outstanding visuals that accompany them. I want to dive deeper into the end of his films, but I also want to quickly shout out the silent scenes in The Moon and First Man, a perfect example of purely visual storytelling that communicates so much. Neil stares into the vastness of space and the never-before-touched moon with some footage of his daughter interlaced into the scene. Before Giselle even shows Neil holding Karen's bracelet, it is evident that she is the reason for Neil's trip. When he drops her bracelet into the moon, he lets go of the grief of his daughter's loss, but in a sense, he also says one final thing to Karen. I love you to the moon and back. No words are spoken, but Giselle communicates Neil's painfully beautiful emotion perfectly. Going back to the end sequences of his films though, I can elaborate on the beauty of the editing, the score, and the visuals, but I'm going to concentrate on an image that they all seem to share. Every Damien Chazelle film ends with the protagonists looking directly at each other, communicating how they feel in just a few frames with no dialogue. In fact, if we pause all of his films in those specific moments, we as audience members can gather more about how they felt than we could have if we had many pages of dialogue to work with. In The First Man, we see Neil and Janet staring at each other through glass. Janet's face tells her story through the film. It is the face of a wife that has been worried sick about her husband, somewhat upset with him for leaving the family to go to the moon, but on the brink of tears from the joy of having him back. Neil's face communicates his regret for leaving Janet all this time, and it reverberates his feelings about going to the moon. He's not excited to be the first man on the moon, he's just ready to carry on with the life he left behind. Neil sends a kiss to the glass, and Janet's fingers meet his fingers across the barrier that holds them apart. This shot speaks to how they have been at a distance throughout the film, but they can finally be truly together after Neil completed his personal mission and let go of his grief. In Whiplash, Andrew is drumming through the most intense part of Caravan, and once he reaches the climax of the song, he stops for a few seconds. Chazelle stretches out those few seconds with slow motion footage, and he shows both Fletcher's and Andrew's faces in that span of time. We only see Fletcher's eyes, but even in his eyes we can see a gleam, a spark that signals he is smiling as he utters some inaudible words. Most audience heads would presume he is saying good job, a phrase that Fletcher had coined as the most dangerous in the English language earlier in the film, acknowledging Andrew's transcendental drumming achievements. The camera then shows a smiling Andrew, overcome with elation as he finally receives the recognition he had been seeking. Chazelle leaves Andrew's face up to interpretation. Of course, Andrew is happy, but is his achievement the worthwhile triumph of the human spirit, or a momentary speck of joy in an otherwise destructive exercise? Over time, I have shifted to the more pessimistic side of that debate, but that will surely remain an eternal point of discussion. La La Land's ending likely has the least room for interpretation out of the three. Chazelle takes us on a magical journey through what could have been. The images are strikingly vibrant and boldly framed, and the musical score brings them to life. The film shows some dreamy camcorder footage of Mia and Sebastian as they move in together and start a family, and the dream suddenly vanishes into reality, where Mia and Sebastian are no longer together. As Mia leaves Sebastian's jazz club with her husband, she stops to glance at his old soulmate one last time. As Sebastian returns the look, there is an instant sense of melancholy, but that feeling is quickly superseded as their frowns turn into grins, and as Sebastian nods his head softly, Chazelle communicates the bittersweet nature of the film's ending. Mia and Sebastian's love, palpable still, did not materialize into the ideal future that they would have hoped for, but they both achieved their professional dreams and were living the life they would have wanted to live before meeting each other. Their love perseveres, maybe not in their relationship, but in their dreams and in how they impacted each other's lives. Ultimately, Damien Chazelle uses striking and intimate images in all of his films to communicate things that not even 1,000 words could, and he uses them at the end of his films to hammer home the themes, relationships, and emotions that had been brewing for hours. Those are only a couple of the through lines that I found in Damien Chazelle's films. Even though his movies have such disparate tones, they communicate similar themes of ambition and sacrifice. They employ masterful visual storytelling, and they feature characters looking directly into each other's eyes, allowing the audience to peek into their soul. I can't wait to see Babylon and look at it side by side with the rest of Chazelle's filmography. If it is anything like his previous features, it'll be nothing short of a masterpiece. Anyways, that's it for this video. This is my first time doing this sort of thing, so if you enjoyed the video, let me know by liking it, subscribing to my channel, and dropping some comments below. I always appreciate the support, and it would be great to know if you all would like to see more of this kind of content. But anyways, thanks again for watching and subscribing, and as always, peace!